The night I called Elliot Voss, I was sitting on the floor of my bathroom with the lights off. Not because I was being dramatic. Because the bedroom door didn't lock, and the bathroom door did, and that was the only thing standing between me and Derek's fist hitting a wall again. Or worse, something that wasn't a wall. My phone screen was too bright. I turned it face down against my knee, then turned it back over. Scrolled through my contacts until I landed on a name I'd almost deleted a dozen times. E. Voss, Hargrove Capital. I'd saved it the way you save a number you're not sure you'll ever need, just in case. The way you tuck a $20 bill in the back of your sock drawer and forget it's there until the moment you really, really need it. I pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. It rang twice. Calloway. His voice was even. Not sleepy, not annoyed. Just present. Like it was 2 in the afternoon and not 11:30 at night. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Zooey. A beat. Where are you? My voice cracked on the first word. I pressed my back harder against the cabinet under the sink. I'm at home. I didn't know who else to call. I'm sorry. This was stupid, I shouldn't have. Are you safe right now? I thought about the door. The lock. Derek's voice through the wood 20 minutes ago, low and too calm, which was somehow worse than yelling. We're not done talking, Zoe. I don't know, I said. 3 seconds of silence. I'm coming. Don't open the door for anyone until I get there. You understand me? I said yes. I don't remember exactly what else he said. I remember the sound of car keys. I remember thinking, this man is going to think you've lost your mind. I remember not caring even a little bit. I should back up. 18 months before that bathroom floor, I was the kind of person who had everything reasonably under control. I had a studio apartment in Midtown that I could almost afford. I had a job I was genuinely good at. Executive assistant to Elliot Voss, managing director at Hargrove Capital, a private equity firm that operated out of a glass tower on Park Avenue that made you feel like you were either very important or very small, depending on the day. I was 27. I had a meal prep routine and a savings account, and I called my mom every Sunday. I also had Derek Hale, who I'd met at a friend's birthday party in Williamsburg 2.5 years ago. Derek, who had been charming and attentive, and who made me feel, for the first time in a while, like I was someone worth paying attention to. Derek, who moved in after 6 months because his lease was up and it just made sense. Derek, who borrowed $300 once, and then $500, and then stopped keeping track. Derek, who said things like you're too sensitive, and you always twist my words so many times that I started to believe him. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't see the signs. I saw them. I just kept finding reasons to look somewhere else. The job, though, the job I was genuinely proud of. Elliot Voss was not an easy man to work for. He was 38, ran the firm's West Coast portfolio acquisitions, and had a reputation for being precise, demanding, and about as warm as a subway platform in February. His previous assistant had lasted 11 months. The one before her, 7. I came in fully expecting to be a casualty. Instead, something clicked. I don't know how else to explain it. I learned fast. I anticipated things before he asked. I didn't crumble when he was short with me, which he was sometimes. And I didn't take it personally, which I think surprised him. After 3 months, he started leaving his calendar fully in my hands. After 6, he stopped double-checking my judgment calls. By a year, I knew his coffee order, his preferred flight times, which clients required a dinner and which required only a call, which investors to put through immediately and which ones to hold. What I didn't expect was to actually respect him. He was hard, yes, but he was also fair. He didn't yell, he didn't belittle. If something went wrong, he'd say, "Here's what I need differently next time," and that would be the end of it. He gave credit where it was due. Once, in a meeting with 7 senior partners, he said, "Zooey caught this discrepancy before our analysts did," and the way he said it, like it was just a fact, not a favor, made me have to look down at my notepad so no one would see my face. I didn't tell him about Derek. You don't tell your boss things like that. But I think he started to notice things. Little things. The way I flinched sometimes when my phone rang. The concealer I started wearing higher on my jaw after one particularly bad night. Nothing visible, nothing dramatic. Just a bruise that bloomed up from a doorframe that Derek swore I walked into myself. The way I started coming in earlier and leaving later, until the office became the place where I felt most like myself, and the apartment felt like somewhere I was just waiting out. I never told him any of it, not once, until the bathroom floor. He arrived in 22 minutes. I know because I counted. I sat on that cold tile with my arms wrapped around my knees, and I watched the minutes tick on my phone screen. And I told myself that if anyone knocked before that door locked behind me, I would call 911. I'd been telling myself to call 911 for 6 months. I want to be honest about that. About how long I stayed because I convinced myself it wasn't that bad yet. Because he'd never. Not really, because there were good days too, and maybe it was me. Maybe I made things worse. Elliot texted, downstairs. I unlocked the bathroom. The bedroom was empty. Derek's jacket was gone from the hook by the door. He'd left at some point, probably to walk it off the way he did, and I hadn't even heard him go. I grabbed my purse and my coat off the chair, and I walked out of my own apartment, and I didn't look back. Elliot was parked at the curb in a dark blue Audi. He got out when he saw me come through the lobby doors. He looked at my face, really looked, the way he did when he was assessing something, and his expression did something complicated that he quickly flattened back into neutral. Are you hurt? No. I shook my head. I couldn't stay there. He held the passenger door open. Then don't. We drove for a while without talking. He took me to the Whitmore Hotel on 57th. Not his regular booking, not somewhere I'd arranged, just somewhere he seemed to know on short notice. And he walked me to the front desk and paid for 3 nights without being asked and without making it a thing. When I tried to object, he gave me a look that I recognized from board meetings, the one that meant this particular discussion is over. In the elevator, he said, "Do you want to tell me what's going on?" "Not tonight," I said. "Okay, I will. Just not tonight." "Okay," he said again. And that was it. No pressure. No list of questions. He walked me to the room, checked that the lock worked, told me to order whatever I wanted from room service, and stood in the doorway for a moment before he left. Zooey. I turned around from where I'd been staring at the bed like I'd forgotten what beds were for. "You did the right thing," he said. "Calling." I didn't say anything. I think I nodded. After he left, I sat on the edge of that hotel bed and cried for about 45 minutes, not because I was sad exactly, but because I'd been holding my breath for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to exhale. I called in sick the next day. First time in 14 months, Elliot texted at 9. "Take the week if you need it. Don't worry about the inbox." I stared at that text for a long time. The week turned into 3 days. On the second day, I called my sister Claire in Portland and told her everything, which took 2 hours and a lot of stopping and starting. She didn't say "I told you so," even though she had twice in exactly those words. She asked if I wanted her to fly in. I said not yet. I said I'd figure it out. On the third day, I called my bank and had Derek removed from the joint account he'd added himself to 8 months ago. I called my landlord and asked about breaking my lease. I called a therapist, whose name I'd had saved in my phone for 4 months without ever using it. I went back to work on Thursday. It was strange walking back into the office. The same marble lobby, the same elevator bank, the same 41st floor with its glass walls and city views, and the soft hum of money being moved around. Lydia at reception gave me a warm smile and didn't ask anything. My desk was exactly how I'd left it, except someone. I suspected Elliot's newest junior analyst, a nervous kid named Paul, had watered my plant. Elliot's door was closed when I got in. His 9 o'clock was already running. I sat down, pulled up my email, and got to work. I scheduled 3 calls, reorganized his calendar for the following 2 weeks, drafted responses to 6 emails, and by the time his 9 o'clock wrapped up, I'd almost convinced myself that everything was fine, and this was just a normal Thursday. Then his door opened. He looked at me. I looked at him. "Good morning, Mr. Voss." Something flickered across his face. A brief thing. "Good morning, Calloway." He paused. "You didn't have to come back this soon." "I know. Are you?" "I'm okay," I said. "I'd rather be here." He held my gaze for a moment longer than usual, then nodded. "Board packet needs to go out by noon. The Meridian draft is on the server. I'll have it ready by 11:30. "I know you will," he said, and went back into his office. It was such a small thing to say. "I know you will." But I sat there with my hands on my keyboard for a second before I started typing, and something in my chest that had been pulled tight for 3 days loosened, just slightly, at the edges. Derek called 47 times in 10 days. I counted those too. He left voicemails that cycled through the full rotation. Apologetic, then sad, then angry, then apologetic again. He texted things like, "I know I have a problem, I'm getting help, and you're the only person who understands me," and once, at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't do this." I read that one twice, and then I blocked his number. He showed up at my building, the old building. I'd already moved to a sublet in Hell's Kitchen, and when he realized I wasn't there, he came to the office building. He didn't get past the lobby. I don't know exactly what happened because I wasn't there when it happened, only heard about it later. But apparently he gave my name to the front desk and said he was there to see me, and apparently someone from Hargrove's security team appeared with impressive speed and had a brief, quiet conversation with him that ended with Derek leaving and not coming back. I found out about it because Elliot came out of his office mid-afternoon and said, in the same tone he used to discuss quarterly reports, "Building security logged an incident this morning. Your ex-boyfriend attempted to access the premises." I felt my stomach drop. "Elliot, I'm so sorry. I'm not telling you so you can apologize," he said. "I'm telling you because I've instructed security to flag his photo, and he won't be able to get within the building or this block without them knowing. I also had legal draft a cease and desist on his contact with you. It'll be ready this afternoon. You can sign it or not. It's yours to do what you want with." I stared at him. When did you? Last week." He said it simply. "Is that a problem?" "No." My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "No, it's thank you." He looked at me for a moment. He'd been doing this for a while. It wasn't a question. I answered it anyway. "Yes." He nodded slowly. Something moved behind his eyes. Not pity, which I couldn't have handled, but something more like anger, carefully contained, the kind you put a lid on because losing it in front of someone wouldn't help them. "I should have seen it sooner." "It wasn't your job to see it," I said. "No," he said, "but I should have." He went back into his office. I sat at my desk for a long moment with my hands in my lap, not moving. Through the glass wall I could see him standing at his window, looking out at the city, hands in his pockets. I didn't know what to do with him. I'd spent a year and a half learning every detail of his professional life, his preferences, his patterns, the particular way he took apart a financial model, and I realized, sitting there, that I'd never once thought of him as someone who might be paying equal attention to me. I signed the cease and desist. Derek didn't reach out after that, or if he tried, it didn't reach me. The months that followed were quiet, not empty, just quiet. The good kind, the kind where you start to hear your own thoughts again. I stayed in the Hell's Kitchen sublet, and eventually found a one-bedroom in the East Village that I could afford on my own. I kept going to therapy. I started sleeping through the night, which sounds like nothing, and felt, at the time, like an enormous accomplishment. At work, things were mostly the same. Mostly. There was a shift, small and undeniable, in the way Elliot and I existed in the same space. It wasn't anything obvious. He still called me Calloway in front of everyone. He was still precise and exacting, and occasionally short when a deal was going sideways. We had the same professional rhythms, the same shorthand, but sometimes, after the floor cleared out, and it was just the two of us finishing something that needed to go out, he'd order dinner in. Always from the Thai place 3 blocks over. Always without asking if I was hungry, because he already knew I was, and we'd sit at the conference table with takeout containers, and the city spread out behind us, and we'd talk. Not always about work. Sometimes about things that had nothing to do with work at all. He told me about growing up in Connecticut, about a father who measured success in basis points. I told him about Claire and Portland and how we'd been estranged for 2 years in our 20s over something that seems impossibly small now. He was a careful listener. He didn't offer opinions unless you asked, and when he gave them, they were honest without being cruel. He had a dry sense of humor that snuck up on you, quiet observations that landed and then disappeared before you could pin them down. I started noticing things I hadn't let myself notice before. The way he remembered small details I'd mentioned in passing. My coffee order changed to oat milk in September, and he updated it in his head without me saying anything. The way he made space for me in rooms without making a production of it. The way he said my name sometimes when we were alone. Zoe instead of Calloway, just occasionally, when something was real and not business, and how it always landed differently than I expected. I told my therapist, Dr. Park, about all of this in exactly the hedged, heavily qualified way that people describe feelings they're not ready to admit to yet. She listened, she said. What are you afraid of? Everything, I said. I just got out of something that wrecked me. I don't trust my own judgment. He's my boss. I probably just feel safe around him because he helped me when I was in crisis. It's probably just gratitude. That's a lot of reasons, she said. I know. Are any of them reasons you actually believe? Or are they reasons you're using to make the feeling go away? I didn't answer. I looked at the print she had on her wall, some abstract thing in blues and greens, until the session was over. 8 months after the bathroom floor, we flew to Chicago for a portfolio review. It was a 2-day trip. We'd done half a dozen trips like this before, client dinners and site visits and back-to-back presentations, everything running on tight schedules and strong coffee. I was good at travel. I knew how to keep things moving. We finished the last meeting at 6:30 on the second day, and the flight back wasn't until 9, and somewhere between the conference room and the lobby Elliot said, "Dinner?" Like it was one word and also obvious, and I said yes before I'd thought about it. We ended up at a small Italian place that didn't have a sign out front, just a door on a side street that he seemed to know existed, the kind of place where the owner came out to say hello and the menu was handwritten on a chalkboard. We split a bottle of red wine that cost more than my first month's rent in college. I'm not sure exactly when the conversation stopped being careful. It happened gradually, and then all at once, the way those things do. We were talking about something. A client, I think. Then something he'd said about the client reminded me of a story about my grandfather. And then we were talking about grief, and then about choices. And then about the years, when you look back and realize you'd been running some background program in your own head that was making your decisions without your permission. He said, I spent most of my 30s being very good at things that didn't matter. I looked at him across the table. The candlelight, which sounds like a cliché, but was just what the lighting was. What changed? He was quiet for a moment. I started paying attention to different things. He didn't elaborate. I didn't push. But the way he was looking at me when he said it made something in my chest do a thing. I wasn't ready to analyze in a restaurant in Chicago, with a glass of wine in my hand. We walked back to the hotel. It was November and cold, and the city looked the way cities look when you see them from the inside, on a night that feels different from other nights. Neither of us said much. In the lobby, he stopped and looked at me. Just looked, the way he did sometimes, like he was deciding something. Zooey, don't, I said. Not unkindly. Not yet. Okay, I need to. I stopped. I'm not there yet. I want to be, I think I stopped again. I was not usually a person who ran out of words. I just need more time. Take it, he said, immediately. No hesitation, no frustration. There's no deadline here. I looked at him for a long moment. This man who had come in 22 minutes, who had paid for 3 nights in a hotel without making it a thing, who had arranged a cease and desist and never once asked what that meant for him. Thank you, I said, for all of it. You would have found your way out without me, he said. Maybe, I said, but you made it easier to walk through the door. We said goodnight. I went upstairs. I lay in my hotel room and looked at the ceiling and thought about how different it felt to be wanted by someone who would also wait for you, and how long it had been since those things had coexisted in the same person. 3 months later, February, a Tuesday, no particular occasion. I was at my desk just after everyone else had left, and Elliot came out of his office with his coat already on, and he stopped at my desk and said, Come on, where? Dinner. He paused, a real one. I looked at him for a moment. He looked back. No pressure, same as always. But something in it was different now, the question underneath the question, and both of us knowing it. Let me get my coat, I said. We went to the Thai place, not somewhere impressive or declarative. Just the Thai place, the one that had appeared on our conference table, in white containers 100 times in the past year. We got a table in the corner and the server recognized us because she'd delivered to Hargrove enough times to know our faces, and she called us the usual 2 without thinking. And Elliot smiled, a real one, the rare kind that got all the way to his eyes, and I thought, oh, there it is. Over dinner he said my name a lot that night, not Calloway, Zooey. Like it was something he'd decided to just do now without announcement. At some point I said, You're allowed to just say what you want, you know. He looked at me. I want to see where this goes. Me too, I said. It was the most uncomplicated, true thing I'd said in a long time. I want to be clear about something, because I've thought about this a lot, and I've talked about it a lot in Dr. Park's office. What happened with Elliot was not a rescue story. I saved myself. I made the call. I walked out the door. I found the apartment and signed the lease, and made the therapy appointment, and rebuilt the parts of myself that Derek had spent 2 years quietly dismantling. Elliot showed up fast, and paid for 3 nights and handled the things he was in a position to handle. But the work, the real work, the long, unsexy, unglamorous work of becoming a person who trusts herself again, I did that, on my own, and I think that's actually why this worked. Because I wasn't looking to be saved. I was just looking to get out that night, and then I was looking to get better. And at some point I looked up and realized I was better, and Elliot was there, and it turned out I was allowed to want that. He never called me fragile. He never treated me like something that needed to be handled carefully. He was patient without being pitying, and protective without being possessive, and I know the difference now between those 2 things better than I ever wanted to. He still calls me Calloway at the office. Professional distance, which we both maintain with perfectly straight faces, and which none of our colleagues are particularly convinced by. He calls me Zoe on weekends. On the nights I stay over at his place in Tribeca, he makes coffee before I wake up and leaves it on the counter, and when I come into the kitchen he looks at me over his own mug with that particular expression. Not smiling exactly, more like satisfied, like someone who is exactly where they want to be. And it still does the same thing to me it did in that restaurant in Chicago. Last month I told Claire about all of it. She was quiet for a moment on the phone, and then she said, "Are you happy?" I thought about the bathroom floor. I thought about counting the minutes. I thought about the hotel bed, and the 45 minutes of crying, and the therapist's office, and the East Village apartment, and the slow, unglamorous work. "Yeah," I said. "I am." She exhaled. "Good." And then, "I always thought you deserved someone who'd drive across town in the middle of the night." "He made it in 22 minutes, I said. She laughed. I could hear her smiling. "Of course he did."